Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to implement the EventEmitter class. So you must have done like the element dot add event listener with some event name and the callback function which need to implement or like gets called whenever that event is happen. So similar kind of EventEmitter we need to implement from scratch in this question. So here like implement an EventEmitter class similar to one in Node.js. So what are the methods present in EventEmitter are like on method. So let's check first. Like there is off method which removes the specified listener from the list of listeners for the event with the name eventName. So it will remove the event name from and unsubscribes that event listener to the from that event name. Then there will be EventEmitter.emit which invokes each listener on that's present on that event with the specified arguments. And there is on method as well which will simply add the callback functions that are listeners to that event name array. So let's implement it. So firstly we need the object events to store the event name with the listeners. So let's events is equal to object dot create null. So here we have created one empty object using the object.create method. So in on method we need to attach or like add the listener to this event name array. So first we will check if this like not of if this dot events and that event name if there are no like event name in present in this events array, so we will simply create that instance for the event name like events and that event name is initialized to the empty array. So if it's not present, and then we will simply add our whatever listener is passed to this event array listener. So we are basically pushing our listeners and returning this context like EventEmitter we are returning so that we can chain multiple operations. So off method will remove the whatever listener is passed from this event name. So first we will check this dot events dot event name. If there are no like events present in this for that event name, then simply we will return this early so that we no need to further check. If there are some events present, we will take it into listeners array. So this dot events and that event name. So we have taken all the listeners, and then we will check for a specific listener and store its index. So listeners dot index of the listener. So we will store this index of the listener passed, and if that index is not equal to -1, that means that listener is present on this event name, and we will need to remove that listener. So we will simply splice with that index and 1. We will remove that event listener, and later if we check if the like listener's length after removing this particular listener is equal to 0, that means our event name has become empty and we are like safe to delete that whole bunch of event name. So we will simply delete that instance of eventName and return this from here as well, so we can chain multiple events on that emit. So now this is emit method. So what emit method does is it will call all the listeners present on this event. So let's add this condition here as well, because we need to check every time if that event name is present in our events object. So but just we will return false, as here it is mentioned, if the that listeners are not present for that event name, simply return false. I will show that here. So return true if the event had listeners, false otherwise. So if there are no events listeners present in that event name, we will simply return false. Later we will simply take these event names into our listeners array by spreading it by making the copy of this. And if there are listeners, then we will iterate over that listeners one by one in that listeners array and call each listener with specified arguments. So we will use that listener.apply method to call that particular function or that listener with this as a context, and whatever arguments are passed, and later we will simply return true as there are listeners on that event name. So let's check. So yes, it's all passed, and let's submit. So there are 4 cases are failing. Let me just check. Object is equality undefined emit 4. So there is some listeners, this dot event returning false, taking that listeners and iterating over that listeners array, returning false. So why it's failing? Again we will check whether there are some subscribe related. So unsubscribe means off method. So if there are no return, these listeners are taken. If index listeners dot index of listener, this one we will simply write this dot events event name. So let me just check false listeners. We are taking all the array, iterating over it. It will not make any difference. Yeah, it is passed just because I have used let keyword instead of const, so it was failing. Now it gets passed. So we can implement this EventEmitter class using this on, off and emit method. I hope you guys learn from this, and just if you have liked this video, and comment if you want any other explanations as well. Thank you.